Hi everyone, and welcome to the very first Teach the World to Sew Day. I'm Carly, and today we're going to be making this fun, practical, and beginner-friendly denim tote bag. Now, if you're sewing at one of our partner locations, go ahead and grab your pre-made kit, which includes all of your supplies. But don't worry, if you're sewing at home virtually and you don't have a pre-made kit, you can still follow along. Find the attached project instructions, which will give you all the project dimensions, supplies, and everything you need to get started. Whether you're brand new to sewing or jumping back in, before we start our tote bags, let's take a few minutes to get familiar with our machines and all of its parts. And remember, all machines will have the same components in one way or another. So if you're sewing on a different model today, that's okay. You'll still be able to follow along. So starting out, you want to find on the side of your machine your manual hand wheel. You want to make sure you always turn this in the direction towards yourself. And you notice it manually moves your needle up and down. So while you're sewing, when you stop, if your needle's in the down position, you need to raise it or manually turn it. This is the lever, the hand wheel that you use. Next, this is our stitch selection dial. You'll notice it has a variety of stitches for the different types of projects or needs you might be making. And today we're going to be in just a standard straight stitch. This is our stitch length dial. Again, depending on the type of material or project you're doing, you might need to adjust the length. Today we're going to be right around 2 or 3, a standard setting. Your stitch width dial, which is up here, it manually moves your needle from one side to the other to adjust your needle position. But if you're in a standard straight stitch, you don't really need to adjust the width. So we're going to have it right around 1 or 0 today to be in the center. Your tension dial, don't worry, we're going to keep that in the standard setting right in the middle, about 4 today. And if you have a needle position, again, if you needed to move your needle, you could use this to move your needle position and not adjust the width. In the back, we have our presser foot lever. Some are under the neck of your machine or in the back like mine, but this lever raises and lowers your presser foot. This is a really important part of the machine. I like to refer to the presser foot as your seat belt. Just like when you're in a car, before you drive anywhere and you press your gas, same thing with sewing. Before you hit your foot pedal and you begin to sew, you want to make sure your presser foot is always on in the down position. If you start sewing a few seconds and you forget to put this down, you'll get in an accident. You'll get what's called a bird's nest and your thread will get all bunched up underneath. So remember, before you sew, you always want your presser foot down. Underneath the presser foot are these little metal groove things called the feed dogs, and that is what is going to guide your fabric away from you. You don't need to tug or pull on your fabric because the feed dogs are going to manually pull it for you. If you do need to tug or pull on your fabric, something's probably wrong with your machine. This is your reverse back stitch lever. To use this, you'll hold this down while you press the foot pedal at the same time, and that creates a lock in your seam. You'll do this at the very beginning and end of a seam to close it off. So again, you'll hold it down and you'll press the foot pedal at the same time. Some machines, you might just push a button. There's different types of back stitch levers, but it will always have this little U-turn type symbol. All right, now let's get threading, and feel free to pause this video or go back to go at your own speed. And before we start, I want to make a note of this. This is the bobbin. It's a smaller secondary spool thread that lives in your machine. Mine's already wound and ready to go in my machine today, but if you don't have a wound bobbin in your machine and you don't know where to start in that aspect, feel free to check out the attached video to get you started on winding a bobbin and inserting it in your machine. So to start threading, what you're going to do first, I have my spool thread here on my spool pin, and what you're going to do first is you notice there's numbers and arrows. Those are going to fully guide you through the process, and you want to make sure before you thread your machine that your presser foot is in the raised position. When it's down, the tension is on your machine and it will be pretty tight and harder to thread. So you want to make sure this is raised in the up position before you start threading. So what I'm going to do first, again, follow these numbers and arrows. I'm going to first pop it right into hook number 1, just like that. Then I'm going to go over to this hook here where there's a number 2 arrow pointing down. I'm going to go around that. I'm going to follow it down. Here's number 3, around U-turn number 4. I'm going to pull it up just as the arrow shows. And then I'm going to wrap it around my thread take-up lever. And you want to make sure it properly falls in this little loop in your take-up lever so it doesn't slide out. Then I'm gonna go around down here by the arrow number 6, there's these 2 little hooks. Now, all machines have some type of hook typically near your needle, and this will help it stay in place longer and not slide out while you're sewing. So I'm gonna first hook it through these 2 hooks here. Then I'm going to take the end of my thread, and now you might need to raise up your needle so you can see it better, but you want to make sure you can see the eye of that needle. So I'm going to take the end of my thread, and mine's pretty long right now, so I'm just going to trim it, especially so it doesn't get frayed. And you're going to take the end of your thread and put it through the eye of the needle from the front and pull it out the back. And once you get it through, you gently grab it and pull it on out. And now my needle is fully threaded. So at all times, you're gonna have 2 pieces of thread hanging off your machine. One that's from your top spool that's going through your needle, and one coming up from underneath from your bobbin. So now we're fully threaded up, we've gone over all the parts of the machine, and we're ready to do a quick practice before we start our tote bag. That way we can get familiar with the machine and make sure we're ready to go and we don't make any mistakes once we start this tote. So today I'm using a little practice sheet with some shapes to go over. If you don't have that, again, you can use some practice fabric, some scrap fabric, anything you have at home to help you kind of get started and do a couple stitches. You first want to know, you want to put your material all the way under your presser foot. You want to make sure the needle is going to fully go into your material to get started. You don't want to start a little bit above the presser foot or even all the way in front of it. You want to have your material fully under the presser foot. So I'm going to start up here at this square. Now, what's the first thing you want to do? You want to make sure your seatbelt is on. So I'm going to put my presser foot down and I'm going to gently press on my foot pedal. Just like when you're driving a car, you don't want to pull out of the driveway going 100 miles per hour. You want to ease into it. So I'm going to gently press on my foot pedal and kind of get started. And you notice here, those feed dogs are grabbing my paper and guiding it. So I'm going to do a first straight stitch down, and I'm going to show you that back stitch. So when I get to this corner here, I want to do a quick little back stitch to show you. I'm going to hold this lever at the same time while I press my foot pedal, and it's going to go in reverse, and that did that quick little back stitch that I needed. So say this was the end. I'm just going to pull this out to show you. I'm going to raise up my presser foot, and a lot of times people are at this spot and they're like, oh, I'm stuck. Nope. You want to first check your needle. So my needle's in the down position. So to remove my material, I'm going to raise up the needle with my manual lever on the side. Then I'm going to pull it over to the side edge, and you want to make sure you put a good few inches of thread off to the side. If you were to trim it right underneath, sometimes you can lose that bobbin thread. So make sure you give yourself a few inches of slack of your thread. And now I just did a nice little straight stitch there. So say I'm doing this triangle here. Again, I'm going to get fully under there. And to kind of remind you, you want to do that back stitch at the beginning and the end of your seam. So I'm starting right here. I'm going to go forward a little bit. Then I'm going to do a quick little back stitch at the beginning. And now I'm going to keep going the rest of the way. And I don't need to do my second back stitch again till where I end. So I'm going to go all the way around this triangle. And what I want to show you now is called pivoting. So to change direction while you're sewing and still stay in the same seam, you're going to go just a little bit further. I'm going to go to this corner here, and now I'm going to pivot. So to pivot, you lower your needle first in the material. So now I have a pivot point. Then you're going to raise your presser foot in the back, and now you can fully turn your material any direction you want to change direction. So now I'm going to turn it this way. Then I'm going to put my presser foot back down, and now I'm going to continue sewing around this triangle. And again, every time I get to a corner, I'm going to stop, make sure my needle's down. I'm going to pivot, turn it this way, and follow the line this way. And you'll notice how I'm going a little bit off my shape, but if you'll notice here, it is fully moving under my hands and I don't need to tug or pull it because those feed dogs are guiding. Now, when I get to where I started, I'm going to do one more back stitch at the end, and then I'm going to pull it on out. Raise up that presser foot, pull it to the side. And I want to mention, it's always best when you move your material, if it ever feels a little stuck, it's best to pull it away when this is in the up position. So make sure this is raised all the way up, and then you can easily pull it away. So now feel free, pause this video, do a couple practice and go through a couple more shapes. If you're using practice fabric, feel free to use a marker or anything if you want to trace over it, but just do a couple stitches and get familiar with your machine. So the first thing we're going to do is actually sew on our patch. Now, if you don't have a patch, that's okay. If you want to add something else to your bag, totally feel free. And if you do have a patch and it's already ironed on and you don't want to do this step, that's okay as well. But I'm going to re-secure it. I'm going to make sure it's extra secure. And I'm going to first just sew right around this line here near the red stitching to give it a little bit more reinforcement. So I'm going to make sure I'm not sewing through both layers. So I'm going to place it under my presser foot and I'm going to lower my needle just a little bit to make sure it's in a good spot near that red stitching. Then I'm going to lower my presser foot. And what I'm going to do is you're going to want to go nice and slow around these curved edges. So I'm going to just show you, I'm going to go real slow, starting out right around these curved edges because you don't want to sew into the lettering or any of that. And as you get here, you might have to pivot just a little bit. So I have my needle down. I'm going to raise up my presser foot and just slightly turn it to go around these curved edges, nice and slow. Again, I'm going to just slowly turn it. Then I'm going to do one more back stitch at the end, take it on out, snip all of my loose threads away from this patch. All right, so before we start sewing up these side of the bags, what you're gonna want to do first is take both your outside fabric and your inside lining fabric and just lay them out, and you're gonna put them together with the good sides facing. So in sewing, you'll say good side, bad side, wrong side, right side. This would obviously be the good side. This would be the bad side. So right now we want to put them together with the good sides facing. Your fold of your fabric will be down here. And what we're going to be doing is sewing down all these side edges of both our outside and our lining pieces, except for on the lining, we're going to leave a hole on one of the side edges about 3 to 4 inches wide. So what you're going to do is you're going to start at one top corner, do your forward back stitch, sew down to this first marker, stop, do a little back stitch there. Then you're going to want to take it out. And then you're going to leave a hole here where you're not sewing, and then you'll start again at the bottom and do another shorter stitch near the bottom. And then you'll sew all the way down this side as well as both of your line or your outside sides. You don't need to leave a hole on your outside fabric. So I'm just going to clip up my denim here. And again, I like to use sewing clips, but if you're using pins as well, that's totally fine. I would definitely recommend using one or the other because you don't want your material to slip while you're sewing. So let's go over to the machine and get started sewing these together. I want to mention the seam allowance. So seam allowance is basically how far you're going to sew away from the edge of the material. For this project, we're going to use 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. Now, 1/4 of an inch isn't marked on the stitch plate here, so sometimes it's a little tricky to find that exact point. It's usually right about here underneath your presser foot, but for the sake of the video today and this project, if you were to match up this right side of your presser foot with the edge of your fabric and have your needle in the middle, that's just about 1/4 of an inch, maybe slightly off, but for today, we're going to be using that. So as long as your seam allowances are all the same, your bag will come out just fine. Again, if you have this right side of your presser foot matched up with the edge of your material, that's close enough to 1/4 of an inch. So starting out, I'm going to start at this top corner. My material is all the way under my presser foot. I'm going to go forward. Then I'm going to do a nice little back stitch to secure this top corner. And then I'm going to sew all the way down to the bottom. And make sure you keep this edge of your presser foot lined up with your fabric so that way your seam allowance stays the same. If you find yourself getting further and further from the edge, then your seam allowance is going to get a little off. So when I get to my bottom corner, I'm just going to do one more back stitch to really secure this. Going to take it on out. And now I'm going to do the exact same thing that I just did there on this side. All right, so now I've sewed up both these side edges. I'm gonna do the same exact thing now for my lining, but you wanna make sure, remember, on one of the sides of your lining, you're gonna leave that hole. So I'm gonna start on this top edge again, same seam allowance. Starting out, do my back stitch. Now I'm gonna stop here to create the hole in my lining. So I'm gonna do a little back stitch here just to extra secure that. Take it on out. Then I'm gonna go down just a few inches right about here and finish the bottom of that side. So I did the side that has the hole, and now I'm just gonna sew all the way down the opposite side, and I don't need to leave a hole on that end. So now we sewed up all the side edges of both our lining and our outside material, and now we're gonna sew our corners. So for this video today and this project, sometimes you can sew a bag with a box corner, but we're just gonna leave the corner like this. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna grab the two sides and you're gonna pull them outward and you're gonna pinch it. So now the corner is flat, just like this. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna sew about 1.5 to 2 inches from this top corner here, a straight line right across the bottom. Now, depending on how wide you want the depth of your bag to be, you can make it even bigger, but basically it's gonna pinch the bottom of your bag. So if you'll see here, this is what it's gonna look like at the end, is to create that depth in your bag. So I'm gonna pinch mine right here. I'm gonna sew right about here, about 1.5 inches down. So you can lay it under there flat. And make sure you sew all four corners to be the same size. You might need to make a line or some type of marker so that way your bag will be even on the bottom. Just like this. Make sure you don't have any wrinkles or anything. I'm going to just fold my seam allowance to the side. You could also open it up if you want, kind of up to you, but I'm just going to fold it over to one side. And again, this bag has a lining, so you won't see any of this seam allowance. It's going to be tucked on the inside of your bag. So I'm going to start on this corner here, going to make sure it's all nice and flat, and I'm just going to sew straight across here. I'm going to start out, I'm going to do a forward back stitch, and a back stitch at the end. And now you're going to repeat that exact process for all four corners of your bag and your lining. So both your outside and your inside, you're going to do the same exact step where you pinch, you flatten, and you sew across these bottom corners. And I'm just trimming all these loose threads as I go. So again, you see my two pinch corners there. All right, so now we have all of our corners sewn, and this part is optional. If you want to trim this, you totally can. It can prevent the bulkiness from being inside your bag. So I'm going to actually trim these corner pieces off. You don't want to trim right up against the thread, but I would say like 1/4 inch away from it, just to prevent that extra bulkiness from being inside the bag when we actually sew it together. So now you can see how I just trimmed that corner. I'm going to go ahead and do that to all four of my corners. Just like that. All right, so for this next part, you can leave this, your lining piece, with the wrong side out. Again, my bag doesn't really have a good, or my lining doesn't really have a good side, bad side, but I'm gonna leave it right now so the wrong side is facing out, and here's the hole. But for this outside of your bag, the denim, you can now flip it right side out. So I'm just gonna grab it, flip it right side out, and then you might need a tool. I have a little, point turner here to help me kind of get these corners out nice and pointy. So go ahead and or just even use your hand and just push these corners to now reveal the depth of your bag. And now we're gonna go ahead and piece our bag together. The right side out, this is still wrong side out, and we're gonna attach our straps. So what you wanna do first, my straps are pre-cut. These are 27-inch, 1-inch wide straps. I am going to first, you're gonna wanna place them facing downward from the top edge here, and you wanna make sure they're evenly spaced from each side. So I'm gonna kind of just eyeball it, but I'm going to make sure, you also wanna make sure that they don't get twisted. So kind of make sure they lay correct and one doesn't get twisted, because when you flip it the right side out, your straps could get a little wonky. So I'm gonna just add some clips to secure it for right now on this side. And then I'm gonna flip it over to this side and I'm gonna do the same thing. And I wanna make sure I match them up evenly with the opposite side. So I'm going to put this one here. And again, it's matched up with that side. So I'm gonna put a clip on this side. And again, one more on this side, matched up with that side. So you can see they're both lined up evenly on the two sides. And now what you're gonna do is you're gonna take this outside piece and you're gonna tuck it inside the lining so the two good sides will be touching. So I'm gonna take my outside piece, I'm gonna take my lining, which has the wrong side out, and I'm gonna tuck it in there. And then I'm gonna take up these top edges, I'm gonna take these straps, I'm gonna gently tuck them in there as well. You might have to kind of shake it around, take this strap, put it in there, and you're gonna match up these side seams here. So these two side seams, you wanna make sure those are matched up. And then you're gonna take your clips and you're gonna clip it all the way around this top edge of the bag. And your straps are gonna stay clipped in there as well. So they're gonna be kind of like a sandwich in between the two layers. And if you wanna even take the clip and then hold them all three together, that works as well. And you wanna make sure you have a few clips here. Make sure it's nice and secure so it doesn't slide. Gonna add some clips on these side seams to really secure that. All right, so what we're gonna do next is we're gonna be sewing all the way around this top edge of our bag. And you wanna double check, make sure that the hole, here's the hole. So at the end, after we sew around this whole top edge, we're gonna pull it through this hole. So just make sure that this hole is visible on the outside. If it's not, you did something wrong. All right, so let's go and sew around this part. All right, now we're ready to sew around this top circle, the top edge of our bag. We're gonna fully sew through both layers and we're gonna sew in our straps at the same time. So as you're sewing, just be mindful when you remove your clips that you don't accidentally let your strap slide. So I would remove those clips right when you're about to get to the straps. But first, what you're gonna do is take off your accessory tray. So your machine has a little accessory tray here. Some of them pop off, some of them slide off. So just go ahead and remove this, and now it's going to be a lot easier for you to sew around the top edge. So I'm going to insert it just like this around this little arm of the machine here and find a good starting point. I'm going to start actually kind of in the center right here. I'm going to remove this clip, get it positioned right under my presser foot. We're going to do that same 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. So I'm going to start out, do my forward back stitch, and then you're just gonna fully sew around this circle. And as you go, you'll notice it will go around the arm of your machine, making it nice and easy. And again, here's one of my straps. I just wanna make sure it's not twisted and I fully secure it at the top. Go a little bit slower over that. And even if you want, you can backstitch over the strap to really secure it. And you might have to stop every now and then, readjust this here so nothing slides. Then when you meet back up where you started, you're going to go over that just a little bit and then do a nice back stitch to really secure all your layers. Then I'm going to pull it on out, give it a trim. And now here's the fun part. You're going to find the hole in this edge of your lining and you're going to pull this through the hole, just like this. Then you're going to fold this right side out. You might have to reach up in and push those corners out. Then before we do anything, finish out our bag, we're going to close this hole. Now you'll notice how it has a natural fold here right along this seam where it folds inward. If you have an iron nearby and you want to give it a good press right on the seam, you can go ahead and do that. I'm just going to simply fold it together. I'm going to use some clips to make sure it doesn't slide. I'm just going to trim this loose thread at the top. And now you're going to sew right up this side edge as close as you can. You want to make sure you don't sew further in because then you'll still have a weird flap that will open up. And you can put back on your accessory tray. So again, I'm going to sew right up this side edge where the hole is, doing a nice little top stitch. And if you want to move your needle position closer to the edge, that's where you can adjust the width to get closer to the right or use your needle position lever. But as long as you're close to the edge, and if you need to lower your needle to kind of see where it's going to land, mine's in a great spot now, right up against the edge. So I'm going to gently go right along to close this hole. Do one more back stitch at the end. And now our bag is pretty much done. We're going to snip that. I'm going to also snip this other loose thread. Make sure you clean up all your loose thread throughout this process. And then you're going to take your lining and you're going to go ahead and tuck it down inside your bag. You might need to really push out these bottom edges. So I'm going to just trim this. I'm going to kind of roll these edges here at this top seam so it lays nice and flat. And this is your mini denim tote. If you have an iron nearby, feel free to press your seams really good along these edges here to give it a clean, crisp look. But thanks for tuning in to the first ever Teach the World to Sew Day.